To EFF rough-ups, Speaker of the National Assembly, Baleka Mbete has seen it all. But President Cyril Ramaphosa is calling this period a new dawn. Free education, the expropriation of land without compensation, just some of the massive issues being debated in the lower house of Parliament by those elected by you, the voter. So can the principal office bearer of the Assembly, the Speaker, be impartial and be a member of the governing party? Well, tonight, Baleka Mbete is our guest in studio. Madam Speaker, thanks very much for coming into studio. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Madam Speaker, let's start off with this issue of impartiality. It's an issue you faced time and time again during your tenure as Speaker of the National Assembly. According to what the parliamentary website said, in terms of your function, the Speaker, though she is a member of a political party, he or she is required to act impartially and to protect the rights of all parties. It must be an incredibly delicate balancing act.
It's actually impartiality towards every single member of Parliament. Because when you are presiding over the House, you are not looking at parties. You're actually looking at every single member of Parliament who has a right, who has a responsibility, who has a contribution. The fact that indeed when we come as members of political parties from political party lists is just by the way, it's a detail. But when people are sitting there and you are in the chair is about giving the opportunities and opening the rights and opportunity and actually everything possible that a member of Parliament needs in order to make sure that they make a contribution. So really, the issue of what a party or who comes from which party doesn't arise.
And yet it's an accusation you faced time and time again.
Yes,
you faced it under Thabo Mbeki, you faced it under President Jacob Zuma time and time again.
Actually, it started in this 5th Parliament. It started with a new phenomenon of a different permutation of relationships in terms of who is in Parliament. Over the years, there was never such an issue. There was never really a question of me being accused of being partial. No. It's only in the 5th Parliament that it started.
And this new phenomenon you talk about, those 25 seats that are now occupied by the economic freedom fighters. Madam Speaker, before you continue, let me just remind our viewers that we are taking your calls as well, your calls and your questions. That number is at the bottom of your screen there at 011 759 6340. So the EFF, that's the new phenomenon you speak of.
In the 5th Parliament, yes. Actually, not necessarily because they are EFF, they are a particular political party, but it is their stance, the decision they've taken about how they will play their role inside Parliament. And of course, it differs from issue to issue, you know, from time to time. But then, of course, I think you are the interviewer.
Madam Speaker, the EFF have added something that a number of analysts, ordinary South Africans, have said was much needed in Parliament, a more robust, to put it very mildly, a more robust type of debate. Would you agree that it was needed and perhaps lacking?
I think they have brought a different energy to robustness, because robustness was always there. I mean, there's no parliament that is not robust because, you know, the tendency is in politics, we really engage one another quite vigorously, and usually we call it being robust. But they have brought a different energy to it in the way that they engaged on issues in particular surrounding the ANC.
And Julius Malema has taken the discussion so far in terms of this issue of impartiality as well, so far as to call for your recusal from the House as Speaker of the National Assembly. Let's perhaps just take a listen to that soundbite, which is dated a few months ago, I believe.
Whether we are right or wrong, the best thing you could have done as a Speaker was to acknowledge that there is no law which forces you, but the fact that almost opposition parties, all opposition parties, are asking that you recuse yourself. Even if there is no law,
Order, honorable members.
you're supposed to just give us that opportunity to be presided over by a different presiding officer. So, in summary, Speaker, you shall receive court papers. Thank you very much.
So how do you feel in a moment like that, Madam Speaker?
Actually, I don't take these moments personally, because if you take them personally, you will really just collapse. You have to remember this is politics playing itself out in the House. And of course, if you are sitting in that chair, you must expect it, you know, that every possible brick is going to be coming your way. How you deal with the bricks is really up to you as an individual.
Let's talk about this particular brick that came our way at the start of the year. It was a first for democratic South Africa, the postponement of the State of the Nation address. At the time, if I remember correctly, early in February, you made the announcement that in fact SONA would not be postponed.
Of the majority party in December. But then the following year, you then have to come to terms with the fact that although there's been that election in the majority party,
And Cyril Ramaphosa is now ANC president.
Cyril Ramaphosa is now the ANC president. You still have a different president. And I think it is something that we, in fact, have decided that we must focus our minds on it as to how best we can handle this moment in the transition from one set of leadership to the next. Because if we don't do that, it will always catch us. It's kind of unexpectedly finding ourselves in a moment which we are not ready quite to handle. So we have decided, for instance, some of our neighbors that we should look at and see what we can learn from them. It's like Botswana. You know, they have a very smooth sailing transition from one leadership to the next. And it's not fraught with tension and fighting. It's known that at this point, this leader goes away, and the next leader is actually known and expected, and it's not a fight. But unfortunately, in the case of early this year, there was a bit of a bump. And so we had to postpone because we had to give ourselves the necessary space to handle the issues and iron out what had to be ironed out behind what everybody saw, and come back and announce what was happening.
Well, now that it is some months later now,
Yeah.
some months later since February, will you take us into your confidence and talk to us about what must have been the discussions going on in the background of the State of the Nation address being postponed, having come from the elective conference in December, these now two centers of power, the ANC government versus the president of the country, the discussions that must have been taking place between the NEC, which you are a member of, and former President Jacob Zuma in terms of these negotiations of whether he should resign, whether he should be recalled?
These are all managed mainly in the political party. But at the same time, remember, the former president was the president of the country, so he was in the office. So it's also talking to his senior managers, senior staff. And remember, President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was already ANC president, was, however, his deputy president in the state. So it was a whole range of complexities that had to be gently managed, discussed with cool heads at all these levels. In the ANC itself, as you know, we ended up with a very long NEC meeting, which finally helped to guide the country, to guide the NEC itself, the ANC, and to therefore enable us to manage better going forward.
And to guide former President Jacob Zuma as well?
Indeed.
In his eventual decision on the 14th of February, which was announced.
Indeed, because remember, the very top 6 who were part of those discussions, there are some of them who are full-time in the party head office, and therefore, from the NEC meeting, would have to go to him and share with him the discussions or the level at which the discussions had gone.
But Madam Speaker, should it have been a smoother transition? Should those discussions even have taken place? You talked about Botswana earlier and the smooth transition of power, taking over the reins from one person, handing those over to the next leader of the governing party. Should it ideally have been a smoother transition?
I think ideally it should have been. But, however, as South Africans, we mustn't complain, because it's not the first time that we were having a transition where there were a few bumps, because we did, after coming back from the ANC conference in 2007 in Polokwane, way into the year, we had to change leadership because there were certain difficulties. But what we must never forget, and you know, because we've had largely issues that we've managed to pull together and not have too much trouble, not have too much of a crisis. But there wasn't a drop of blood around those transitions. Unlike many other countries in the world, when you would have a transition like this, the likelihood in other countries is that there will be bombs, there will be deaths, there will be blood. In South Africa, on these 2 occasions, and I happen to have gone through both of them, when we changed, we had a transition from President Mbeki of government to, at the time, President Kgalema Motlanthe. You know, so we celebrated, and we should celebrate the fact that we do manage our matters with as little trouble, as little violence as is possible, unlike other situations that we have seen and we continue to see around the world.
Let's touch on that issue of violence in just a moment, but first let's take this call now that we've got. Mike is calling us. He's on the line from Cape Town. Mike, you're live on ENCA. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, and thank you, and good evening, Madam Speaker. My question, you've presided over quite a few debates in the House, and as you say, impartiality is very, very important. But you managed, or you presided over debates, particularly on the mining houses, where you made, I think it's 26 million rand in one exchange in Goldfield shares some years back. And since then, you, as I say, you presided over these debates on mining houses. Doesn't that affect your impartiality when you have profited from share transactions in gold mines, yet you've had to obviously preside over debates where they have been very contentious? Thank you.
All right.
I think I have an idea what he's talking about.
You heard his question?
I didn't hear the question.
I think the correct number that we have, according to a Mail and Guardian article, is 25 million rand from Goldfields. He's talking about this issue of impartiality again.
He says what about the 25 million rands?
If you've made money off contracts with Goldfields, how is it that you can preside over issues related to the mining industry?
Mike, thank you very much for your question. And I'm always glad when South Africans raise questions pointedly. Mike, I've never had a single cent from Goldfields. I know what you are talking about because I've also read those articles that you are referring to. But in any case, Mike, every citizen of this country has a right to be invited and to participate in any business activity as long as it's all within the limits of the law. That really is where I'd like to end that answer.
So you're disputing that there was this 25 million rand share?
I'm not disputing. I'm just saying I don't have a cent from that. I just read these figures in the Mail and Guardian. But even if I had received the actual money, there is nothing illegal I have been involved in. And so, as a citizen of the country, everybody has a right within the limits of the law, as long as you don't do anything illegal, and as long as you don't run the company. I've never run any company. I don't know what, informs the running of that company, but I don't sit and take decisions about Goldfields or any company.
All right, let's move on for just a moment, Madam Speaker, to this issue of bloodshed that we talked about just before Mike's call came in. And you were talking about the transition from one set of hands of power to another without bloodshed, and yet KwaZulu-Natal is still an area that we're battling political killings on a daily basis.
I agree with you. It's difficult, and a process has gone on whereby we are aware that the Premier was handed a report that came from investigations into these killings that have been referred to as political killings. I think it's a good thing that now we know the Premier has the report. We anxiously await to hear what the contents of that report are.
All right, let's take another call now. Potsoy is on the line. This call also coming to us from Cape Town. Potsoy, you're live on ENCA. Please go ahead.
I actually just want to say to the Speaker that she contributed to the bringing down of the decorum of the House of Parliament by having acted impartially when she was expected, to act above that. And I'm saying this with pain in my heart because she therefore contributed in the ANC that we saw in the past 5 years.
What's your response to that, Madam?
My response is I would have preferred Potsoy to be more specific about the actual contribution of the Speaker in what he is referring to, the bringing down of the decorum of the House. Because if there's one thing anybody in the chair is looking out for, is to keep order and decorum in the House. Now, specifically, what is he referring to?
Yeah, that's a good question, but perhaps let's take a look at this bite that we have, the soundbite that we've just cut, if we do have it available to play for our viewers. The Parliament violence that we saw taking place. I believe this particular clip that we're playing is from 2017. Let's just take a look.
Just kill me. There's no problem. Kill me.
I mean, Madam Speaker, if you cast your mind back, I'm sure you don't have to cast your mind back very far, but those were shocking visuals we saw coming from
They were, except South Africans choose to forget what leads to that moment. South Africans always selectively only put that image on the screen without having even spent a minute to describe the hour that would have gone on before that moment.
I think that was from State of the Nation Address 2017.
It is. It might have been, or any other one.
And the point of it was that the EFF were adamant at that stage that then President Jacob Zuma would not be delivering SONA 2017.
But I'm saying to you, the House works according to rules. It doesn't matter how strongly you feel about something, you feel must not happen, should not happen. there are rules that determine how we do things in the House, how we engage, how we take up issues that we feel strongly about, how we believe that one individual or another is wrong or whatever you feel about them. And it is that which I'm saying, conveniently, South Africans don't talk about the hour or even more that in fact is spent to patiently engage with members of the House, to ask them not to pursue the issues that they are raising in the manner that they do. But they don't care, they feel strongly, it must be done here and now because it's us and we've come here, we don't care about rules. They say so. They say we don't care about protocol, we don't care about rules. Is that how we are going to conduct the parliament and the life of South Africans? And my answer is no, we shouldn't. But somehow, each time we have a discussion, we don't engage into that. How have we dealt with these issues in the past before we started seeing this kind of drama in the House? But somehow, it doesn't occur to all of us. All that matters is that now there are people who throw them out. We throw them out at a certain point when too much time of what in fact South Africans know is a day of focusing on the State of the Nation address. And then all of us have to sit there and wait and, be part of this drama where we are saying, yes, you have a right to raise the issues you raise, but it is not supposed to be done the way you are doing them.
Madam Speaker, if you can't believe it, I've just been told we have 2 minutes left of this interview, and I want to just talk about...
I don't believe it either.
I want to just talk about this new dawn, this Ramaphoria that's been engulfing the nation over the months since President Cyril Ramaphosa took office. And I want to just perhaps end our interview on a slightly lighter note and take us back to that moment when the president was being sworn in Parliament. And I don't know if you remember this interaction between the two of you, but let's just play that clip.
I declare the Honorable Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa duly elected President of the Republic of South Africa.
Now, as they say these days, you were trending after that moment in Parliament.
I know.
So what was going on in that moment there?
I took one look at Comrade Cyril and I saw a young man, I saw someone who was thinking of his mother. That's what I saw next to me. And I thought, this comrade needs a hug. And I gave him a hug and a kiss.
Madam Speaker, you looked very happy, you looked proud in that moment as well. Is that me editorializing what was going on in that moment?
I was proud.
Was it a happy moment, and why?
I've worked with Comrade Cyril for many years. You remember we were together back at the World Trade Center at the time when we were still working on the interim constitution. And I remember a moment that he helped me through when I was very down. I was going through a very bad patch in my personal life at the time. And he came and he gave me such brotherly advice. And I'll never forget that. So I think about the comrade as a human being whose mother is no longer around. And I know those moments make a person think about those that brought him up. Now he no longer has a father, he no longer has a mother, so what do? Here am I next to him, let me give him a hug.
Now, as we are now well into this new dawn that everyone is so excited about, we're looking at attracting hundreds of billions of dollars into the country in new investment. And Nhlanhla Nene is back at the Finance Ministry, which everyone has applauded. There's a new Eskom board. In terms of where you see we perhaps are faltering and the challenges that we may still face, corruption still swirling around key members of your government and key government institutions as well. As we celebrate Women's Month this August, the incredible levels of violence against women and children. What are some of the key challenges for you as we wrap up this interview?
I think I see the key challenges in the area of South Africans being people that continue to live with a lot of pain. And that pain wreaks actually the havoc that is visited on women and girl children. Because it is this thing that we still need to work out of our systems. We need to take out our anger of not just decades, but centuries. We need still to heal. We need to cleanse. There's a lot we need to focus on and decide how we're going to deal with going forward. But I think also the issue is in the area of the economy, where the president has actually said, you know, let us focus on how we can attract investments. What is it we can do differently so that when the world looks at us, it just feels that they want to come into this country. They want to come and work with us. They want to come and help us make a South Africa that's better, that works better, an actual reality. I think if we can focus on those issues, and also I think that there's a lot we can do that we have not given ourselves enough chance to talk more about in terms of in the rural areas, the most depressed parts of our country. How do we focus on those issues that matter most to those people in those parts of the country that are more depressed than any other?
Madam Speaker, before we let you go, one more call which we'll take now. Lancy from Roodepoort, you're live on ENCA. Go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am. I don't know if I must say good evening to the Honorable Speaker or must just call her Madam Mbete.
Good
evening. But my question is to try to find out, ma'am, you were the chairperson of the ANC for quite some time as a woman, and we are in the Women's Month today, as in August. I just want to find out, ma'am, what you would call your legacy in as far as women development is concerned. What is it that when you look back, you would say, as chairperson of the ANC, this is what I did as a contribution towards the development of women? Thank you.
You know, what I think will always stay with me is the fact that more and more in South Africa, we see women coming out very boldly expressing themselves, whether they like something or they don't like something else. And I think women who made themselves an example ahead, because you know in our languages they say, "Inyathi ibuzwa kwabaphambili." It is from those who are ahead that you check about the buffalo and how do you behave, because it's those who are ahead, in other words, older generations, people from whom we learned how it is to be a woman activist, to be a woman leader, to do things that previously we were told girls cannot do. So I hope that we will continue to encourage the young women to continue to be bold, as they are now.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for taking the time on this Friday evening to spend some time with us.
Thank you.
Speaker of the National Assembly, Baleka Mbete, love to us here in studio. Well, coming up, what does the sudden departure of NSFAS chair Sizwe Fasana mean for students? Can the Higher Education Department solve the deepening crisis of student funding? We'll unpack that story for you next. Stay with us.